the coolest way to start your weekend.
Ask the Podcast Coach for December 19th, 2020.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there, you know him, Mr. Home Gadget Geeks, Mr. TheAverageGuy.tv, Jim Cullison. How's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Kind of pre-Christmas Saturday. Like, guys, time is getting short.
Yeah.
You haven't done your Christmas shopping. This is the weekend, right?
Yeah. My dad was a long-distance truck driver, but even when he had time, he was the guy that was going out. And part of it was my dad, God bless him, was cheap. And so he was looking for those Christmas Eve, got to sell these, got to get them out of the store kind of sales. And it was always interesting what you would end up from my dad for Christmas, because he would wait till the very last minute.
You get the 7-Eleven, Slurpee coupons for Christmas, whatever.
Like here, it's a coffee mug.
You can get a big gulp. Get a big gulp. Speaking of big gulp, I'm kind of thirsty. What do we got this morning?
Here we go. Let's get that pour going. The pour, of course, is brought to you by the one and only Mark over at podcastbranding.co. And here's the thing I love about Mark at podcastbranding.co and having him as a sponsorship of the Morning Pour. I ordered it this week. That's right. The Ask the Podcast Coach show artwork is in progress. I reached out to Mark and I was like, and here's the other thing. I don't know if Mark does this all the time, but he's just a cool guy. I was working on there's some rebranding I'm doing at the School of Podcasting for the membership site area, and I realized my old logo was on there. And I reached out to Mark and I said, hey, what font did you use? And so I was able to and some graphic people won't do that because they don't want you to make more graphics, but I was just replacing text. And Mark's like, oh yeah, here's the font I use. So I was able to make the rest of my website kind of match my logo. Just very, very cool. So if you need artwork, if you need a logo, if you need a website, if you need a lead magnet, PDF, anything that you want to look really, really good and make that great first impression, go over and see podcastbranding.co and tell Mark that Dave and Jim sent you. Oh, I almost hit it.
Dave, I should mention coffee mug brought to us this morning, this one by the Grow and Graze podcast. Doug Clement sent this over to me. Of course, they're launching here in January. So if you want to check out Go and Graze, so it's tough to say, but it's easier to type, goandgraze.com. And it's around 4-H, latest any gardening, plant varieties, healthy lifestyles, volunteer opportunities. I don't know if I said this last week, but I was a 4-H'er growing up, and I did a lot of things in 4-H that got me ready for podcasting. Like I was the 4-H club president. They have these things called demonstrations that you would do. I was really good at them. And so that was one of those things thinking back. So 4-H got me ready. Doug, thanks for sending that, and appreciate you and the work that you do. Grow and Graze podcast launching in January. Get signed up for it now.
And if you want to join in here, we're at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. If you have a question and you want to talk to Jave, that's, if we were a couple, we'd be Jave.
Let's go with it. Let's go with it. I'm okay with it.
Come in and talk to Dave and Jim. Just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join. And just like the one and only, you know him, you love it. You're talking about 4-H and cows. Mm-hmm. Well, if you go up from a cow, what do you get?
A horse?
That's it, my friends. The one and
Hi,
only.
guys.
You gotta love.
Glenn's back.
Hey, Jim.
Glenn, how are you?
There he is. America's horse
I
husband
knew you'd
himself.
have the Winnie for me. I knew it would be there.
I was over here scrambling. My God, it's got to be in here somewhere. But Glenn, great to see you, buddy.
Well, thanks for all the kind words every week. I heard them every week, even if I wasn't in a position to join you. I did hear your kind words every week, and I appreciated it.
Well, good to see you back. Good to see you upright.
Yeah, doing better. I didn't die, and I'm still here. So
That's two positives.
Yeah,
There
right.
you go.
During like 2020 gave you more, I think, than you expected, but maybe different than you expected. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So things are good now. You're on the mend?
Feeling better. No chemo, so that's good.
Oh, good.
You know, they think they got all the cancer and all the other problems I had seem to be resolved. And I'm down 30 pounds, although it's not a great weight loss method. It's not great. No.
No, I don't recommend that way to lose weight. It's like getting the flu. That's not the way you want to lose. Comes right back.
There are better ways to do that. That's for
I
sure.
love your backdrop, guys. That's perfect today.
Which one?
The holiday one you've got going here on StreamYard.
Yeah.
It's great.
Canva.com is what I did. And then last week I realized that all my your names and the scrolling things did not match anymore because that was all blue. So I kind of was like going to try to match some shade of red to get it going. So now when I do things like this, it doesn't
perfect.
look.
I'm impressed. Who knew Dave was an artist?
I know.
Who knew?
He's pretty good at it. I am sad though. The School of Podcasting logo, which is right there, is covering up my fireplace.
Oh wait, hold on. We can fix that.
I don't even see your fireplace.
I know because
look at that.
Oh,
Oh,
there
that's
we go.
great.
Oh yeah, because the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful.
Is it warming? Does it shoot out
It
a lot of
is.
hot
Yeah.
air?
If I get chilly, I just put my hand back there.
Well, Glenn, we're gonna hear about this on the School of Podcasting, but spill the beans here as well. You've got, as we look at Glenn, he's got his is it auditors? Yeah,
they're my auditors up over there.
He's got pictures behind him of all the people that are.
I got to update that. That's like 5 years old. If I put them all up now, they would take up every wall in my office.
That's awesome. And when you create a podcast, a lot of times it's just you in a spare bedroom, and you kind of you see the numbers, but what happened is Glenn got sick, to like super sick. And that triggered his auditors to come out of the woodwork. So explain
our
what happened
auditors
there.
are our Patreon people. They're the people that donate through Patreon. And we have I think there's 550 now. And they all have their private Facebook room. That's one of the most active, positive places you'll ever be. And it's self-patrolled, and it's great. And they formed a separate room because they know I'm in there, and I was looking around. So they formed a separate room and called it Glenn's Get Well Room or something that I never did find. And about 100 of them got together, and they put a care package together and sent it to one of the auditors that's here in town. Wow. And had them deliver it. And in it was gifts and cards and Visa gift cards and everything, totaling over $4,000.
Wow.
Cha-ching.
It took like 2 hours to open everything. There were about 100 of them that signed a card, and there were cards in there and all kinds of treats for the ponies and all that stuff. So I was just blown away. It was interesting because my co-host, before I went in for the first surgery, before all this happened, she said, somebody wants to do something for you. Should I give them your address, or should I send them to a charity? And I thought, people want to give. So it's an important lesson, I think, to learn is they feel like we're their friends, and we are their friends because they hear, in my case, me every day. And they want to give to you. And when you deflect it to a charity, I'm not saying don't give to charity or don't do this, but I thought in this case, it's very personal. So let's let them give whatever. And I thought, it was going to be a horse treats. And it turned out to be this, this amazing thing that really had me in tears the day they did it. You have no idea how you affect people. But more than that, in the cards and things were stories about how our show saved them on a bad day. So, and that's something that we don't hear about a lot, but because I was so sick, they shared those stories, and that was just amazing. Whether it was they were going through a divorce or somebody had died. We've had several of our listeners have family members die of COVID, and they listen to our show to get through that. We're there to distract them. So, you are affecting people with what you do, even though you may not realize it, and it isn't in your face every day.
Glenn, it's always these crisis times, and this is like a double crisis. We're in the middle of COVID, and this happened to you, and I think it's the time that you really start to see who and what, and really the work that you've done. Because sometimes you do this and you think, am I really doing anything?
I know, I've been doing it a long time.
Is anybody listening to this thing? Now, and we know, we track our numbers and such, but you still have those moments, right? And then you have these kinds of times where my son was injured a decade ago in a skiing accident. We almost lost him. at work, they put together 2 big boxes. He was going to be in physical therapy for a while, and they put together 2 big boxes of things for him to do while he was in physical therapy. And then my wife picked him up and brought him. And there were cards and stuff in there. And that's just like, to have the community do that. It's got that. It's one, it feels good. By the way, I think that probably helps your healing too, by the way, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So great on your audience too, for pulling that together.
And then, I want to thank podcasters that I know some of them are watching today that reached out. I mean, it was just both communities reaching out that really did help in the really painful times. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. What's recovery look like for you?
I'm good. I'm good now. I'm eating again. So I'm sure I'll be back up 30 pounds in no time.
It's Christmas time, right?
Yeah.
Right. Listen, going into Christmas 30, but down 30 is like a dream for most people.
Bring on the cookies.
I've lost all my muscle, so that's something I'm working on, and get to start playing with my horses again and do all that. But I'm back. Doctor said I'm released. So
good.
Good.
Did it change anything? Are you going to change anything in the network? Did you learn anything new during this time?
I learned that I need to take more time off and enjoy life more, because you guys know I'm a workaholic, so it's 100 hours a week between my wife and I doing this. And so we bought an RV, we bought a camper. A COVID camper. While I was sick, I had a lot of time to shop, so I was doing that. And, we're taking more time for us. And we're going to do a listener tour this summer. I've always wanted to do that. 10 years I've wanted to do it. And basically what we're going to do is stop at listener farms and visit their horses and them. We're going to take 5-6 weeks and travel the country, stopping at listener farms. And I've had 250 of them volunteer already. So.
Wow.
That's going to be a lot of fun, I think. That'll be something I've always wanted to do. We'll broadcast from the camper. So
you got to come up with a cool name.
We do. We're going to need a logo. Who do I see about that, Dave?
That would be podcastbranding.co.
Okay, good. I'll have to check that out.
Something, Horse Radio Network Tour 2021. It's like, there's something like, I don't know.
After
FU Cancer 2021 tour.
That's right. There you go. I like that, actually. That's pretty good. And I got to give a shout out to somebody I do know watches this show, and that's Lee Silverstein, who checked on me every day and really guided me through that whole process. He was absolutely terrific, and I know Lee's, he's still battling his battle, and we're thinking about you every day, Lee. So
yeah.
No. Glenn, this can sound like a morbid question, but at some point, did you think maybe
I was checking my life insurance, making sure it was paid?
Did that change anything? I mean, did that set some new priorities for you going forward?
I think just the workaholic thing. It was like work is great, and I love doing what I'm doing, but I also need to enjoy a little more.
Yeah.
And just take more time off, and you can work forever in this job. We're full-time podcasters, have 20 shows, 30 some hosts. We can work forever doing this. You can work 24 hours a day and you're never done. And I think it's accepting the fact that you're never done.
Yeah.
You know what you don't do today will be there tomorrow and probably will not change a whole lot.
Right.
And I also learned that, I have a great team and they stepped in. We didn't miss a show that whole time, even though I wasn't on them. But it didn't matter. And we were doing live, another important lesson. We've been doing live for 10 years on Horses in the Morning daily, live. And we went off of live because it was too hard for the fill-ins to do live. It was just too hard. So we stopped doing live for a couple months, and then I surveyed my audience and said, did you miss the live? And we only had 100 or 200 listen live anyway out of the tens of thousands that listen, right? So, and 99% said, no, I didn't miss it. I just listened later. And it was like, okay, we're not doing live anymore. So we do it as live. We record it as live. We still put it out within an hour every day. It goes out by noon every day. But it took a lot off my plate, and it made it so much easier. It's like, why am I killing myself for the 100 people and not worrying about the thousands? Those 100 are going to listen anyway. They're your dedicated diehards, right?
Yeah.
So that
you still might hear from them. Like, you make that decision and you're going to have 3 or 4, maybe 5 who are adamant. Like, I have to have it live. Right. And it's hard because you start creating systems for the minority. And in some cases, it's a very small minority. Now, they're very vocal and they're very passionate, but you start creating these systems for them, or you start creating these exceptions is probably a better word for it. And pretty soon you have 100 exceptions. That is why you're working 100 hours, because you're creating all these different, instead of really focusing on the mass number. Now, I think there's a balance in there somewhere, because sometimes you want to do things off the beaten path for some folks, because that's the right thing to do. The hard part, I think, is knowing what to do and what not to do. You have a situation like this, and it quickly cuts away a lot of the junk pretty fast.
Yeah, it took the decision making, made it much easier.
Yeah, right. No. And you kind of learn some things pretty fast, and you're like, okay, we don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. And then it's easier to justify it to your audience too, because they're like, oh yeah, like we had some things happen, and you're like, well, cause COVID.
Right.
Because COVID. And so, it just makes it easier that way.
Well, when we travel, we always had this hassle, especially with what we do at horse shows and stuff, finding good internet to do live, and then it was always a hassle where we had to pay hundreds of dollars to get it done. And it's like, why are we doing that when I could still have it out by noon and we do it as live? That is, I think, something that's important. We still act like it's live. So we're not recording it like we do the other shows where we might record interviews first and then everything else second. We're doing it in order. Yeah. And so it still has that pressure, and people hear that, like it's live today, right? Mm-hmm. If I start swearing up a storm, it's there, so it's like, So yeah, it's been an interesting experience.
Do you going into 2021 any big changes because of this? You're going to do some traveling, you're going to slow some things down. Anything else that kind of came out of this?
I was looking at a bunch of new shows to do, and now I'm really looking at those new shows going, okay, unless in our case they have to be funded first. We have to have sponsors or and I've always been kind of that way, but I've also slipped a couple and said I'll start the show and look for the sponsors later. Now I'm not doing that. They have to be sponsors. We have to be profitable to start a show now, and that's time again, right? Time is our biggest enemy when you're full-time anything, especially podcaster. Time gets away from you. It just is our biggest enemy. People don't believe that when they're starting podcasts. And I always said it's 8 to 12 hours of pre and post production for every hour you're on the air, if you're doing it right. And that includes marketing and sales and booking of guests. People don't count all that stuff. They only count the editing. Well, that's only a small part of pre and post production. When you look at the whole thing, it's 10 to 12 hours if you're doing it right and you're really trying to get the word out. So, I'm not trying to talk people out of it, but you have to be realistic. When you take a look at how often you're doing it and all of that. All our shows now are started twice a month. We don't start weekly anymore. I won't even let them, because the ones I've started weekly recently, guess what? Oh, I'm running out of time. If you started twice a month, we wouldn't have this problem, right? Twice a month is enough to build an audience. Once a month, not. I don't think is. Right. Twice a month is. Yeah.
That's some good insight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some good insight. I hadn't thought about that. Twice being the twice monthly as opposed to every single.
Well, guess what? It's also easier to find a sponsor for twice a month than once a week.
Oh, okay.
So they can do twice a month at so much per episode, because I charge a flat rate.
Gotcha.
And then when you get to the point, I always tell my hosts or new shows, when you get to the point where you're sold out, we'll put 4 ads in an hour. So when you're at the point where they're sold out of that show, then we go to weekly. Then we can go to weekly, right? And we're paying for it. Then I can add more sponsors into that mix. So make it profitable to the point where you can't support any more advertisers, and then increase. But why are you increasing for the sake of increasing before that? If you're in the business to make money, we always have to look at that, right? It's one of the things I have to do, because time is money.
Well, you've watched Dave and I start to introduce ads.
Yeah. I love the pour.
What kind of?
I love the pour. I think the pour is great, because I never fast forward through the pour if I'm listening recorded. I don't fast forward through the pour, because I want to hear what you're going to say. Now, I don't watch live very often, so sometimes I'm wondering, is he actually pouring coffee at that time? And then
Well, it's funny. Last week, someone in the chat room, we got the sync out, and they were like, "Oh, the new cup isn't as loud as the old one, as the old one was." And I'm like, "That's just audio, guys. Like, you can't actually hear it going in."
Jim has an invisible pitcher.
Here.
Go ahead, use your invisible pitcher.
I thought it sounded perfect every time.
Would you give us any what other advice?
I tell you, I don't know, Dave. Should I talk about the survey and specifically to what he's talking about?
Go
with the
right
type of
ahead.
ads?
Just know that if you're an SOP listener, this is so good you're going to hear it twice.
So we did a survey of our listeners, got about 300 responses, and we asked them specifically what kind of ads do you like and don't like? Because we do them all. We do pre-recorded, we do host-read, we do conversational where the host just talk about the product. We do all kinds of ads, right? And we do product reviews. Number one was product reviews. They loved product reviews. So that's something we're going to do more of. And then host read ads was way down on the list, where you're just reading a script from that's provided by, one of the many food services every month. I won't identify any particular one, but we all heard them, and they're reading an ad, right? So we found that top on the list were definitely conversational ads, where it's two hosts talking about a product or a company, and it's different every week, and we're sharing, I use that product, I don't use that product, whatever. And then the top two were then product reviews. And a lot of times we'll get our listeners to do the product reviews and then come on the show to talk about it and do the review. So that's even more gold, right? Because then they're hearing it from a peer. They're hearing it from somebody like them. So those two were definitely the top two. And at the bottom of the list was host-read ads and pre-recorded ads. Another one that was very high up, number 3, was when the sponsor comes on the show and joins us for a couple of minutes to talk about a product or something, right? They like those because they like putting a voice to the company. So we've definitely changed the type of advertising we do since I did that survey.
Well, we need to get Mark on here.
That's
right?
it.
Right there.
Yeah. No, I think
on.
you should actually, because people like you. You've been doing these commercials now. It'd be fun to hear them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's a lesson that we learned through doing surveys. And you'll hear a lot more about surveys on Dave's show. That's a double time.
Yeah, so go listen. School podcasting.
Yeah, that's
on Monday.
Well, actually, Monday's show is going to be about Glenn and his. I have another clip of another show, and we're going to talk about the impact you have on people that you don't realize. And in Glenn's case, it was just that's amazing. But there are a couple that I came across, and I was here's another one where you hear listeners talk about the host, and I was like, so as much as we kind of go, hey, is this thing on? It's on, and sometimes you don't realize it, and that's when you kind of go, wow, holy cow. So yeah, that's going to be on Monday's show. And then I'm working on some more stuff to put around, like Glenn is the basement of the survey show. And I've got Scott Johnson I want to interview. Because he said something on his show.
Foundation's a better word, Dave. Foundation.
Yeah, can I be on the first floor at least? The moldy basement.
Yeah. And I'm building things around like how to do. In fact, Jim, you would be a good guy. You might know a thing or two about surveys.
A few.
Maybe
I do.
Mr. Gallup. Yeah.
I do know a few things. I'm not a survey research scientist, but
right.
I know a few things.
And I'm sure mine was not scientific, but it gave me the answers I was looking for.
Yours doesn't need to be. By the way, for these kinds of things, yours when you're surveying your audience that way, and you're doing a census survey is what you were doing. It doesn't need to be scientific in a lot of regards, because you're really looking for the opinion of the most engaged listeners anyways. And so those that respond are going to be the ones that get it. The work we do, and we're trying to get public opinion, well then selection, right? You select people to represent the population. So for most podcasters, just blast your audience, just any feedback in some cases is better than none, because it's really hard. Glenn, what kind of in your survey, what kind of response rate do you get when you do surveys?
Well, we did it in the auditor room. So we did it in the Facebook room, because I also wanted to read the comments. The comments are more valuable than your statistics after the survey is done, because that's where they really tell you what they like and don't like, right? But by doing it as a survey in the Facebook room, they will comment specifically about the shows in a survey that they won't do every day.
Right.
Because they're thinking about it then, right? What do I like or what don't I like? It forces them to think about it and then go, I need to tell them about this. So those comments were valuable.
Yeah.
And then you look for trends in the comments, right? If a bunch of people are saying the same thing in the comments, you got 300 responses, comments going, and 50 of them are about the same thing, then you're going, okay, well, I got to pay attention to that. So basically, of our auditors, 60% responded.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but you think, Dave, that's the most engaged.
That's the super group, right?
That's the super, that's the people you care about.
Right. They're paying. So
yeah. Well, and the other thing that I think you did well is, because we really want to find out what don't you like, but by asking them what's your favorite, they kind of then let you know, like, this is why I like this. And then you can kind of see, oh, well, then they're not going to like this. It gives you an insight. Because I think that's one of the things that, especially if they're your super fans, if you just ask them, hey, like, what do you think I should change about the show? they don't want to like you're my hero. I don't want to say I hate this about your show, but by asking them what's your favorite part and what part do you like, I think, because I don't think you had anything like that in your survey where it's like, hey, tell me where I suck. Did you?
Not that I published. No,
Yeah.
that was in the comments.
Well, that's it. It's the comments. But but that was because they were saying, hey, I really like it when you guys do product reviews because such, and then they start to explain why they don't like these other ones. It's a way of setting it up to find out the negative stuffs by asking what's, if you understand what works, then you kind of also probably going to hear what doesn't, which is what you did.
Here's another tip, and I don't, it depends on the structure of your show, but one thing that we have changed because of our surveys recently is we've gone to more segmented shows than one big long interview. I'm finding that people are getting bored with big long interviews because every podcaster is doing them. So now, like on our morning show, which is 90 minutes, 5 days a week, we're doing shorter segments. It's 10 to 15 minute segments, and then we're moving on. So if we have a guest, it's 10 to 15 minutes. If we have two guests, 10 to 15 minutes each, and then we're going on to a different segment. And we name the segments and we announce, okay, now it's time for this segment. And then, listeners get used to when those segments are every week. Yeah. So they'll tune in for that particular thing if that's a segment they like, or they look forward to it if it's a guest we have on every week. So we are definitely going with shorter segments. And new shows, I'm recommending no more long interviews. Let's leave them wanting more, not less, is always been the rule, right? And when you do long interviews, I think a lot of times they're wanting less. So we're definitely going with shorter segments.
Yeah, I've started doing kind of hidden segments. So we'll do the first 30 is the kind of the main topic. So we get that out of the way up front, and then try to have two more 15 or 20 minute different items, but same person. So you're not making the transition, but kind of these clear delineated subjects. So that, like you're saying, so it's not just because we go an hour and 20 minutes, hour, 30 minutes, nice, sort of 90 minute like that for you. But I do realize I do need to move on. Hey,
if they're not interested in that segment at all or that guest at all, they then know, hey, look, it's going to change in a couple of minutes, and I'll be on to something else. Yeah. So I think that's important. I've listened to interview shows that's all they do, and I'm 5 minutes into the guest, and I'm not listening to the rest of the episode because I'm not interested in the guest for whatever reason.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's what we're doing with our new shows is we're definitely encouraging. So in a 60 minutes, have at least 4 to 5 different segments. Yeah. And some of them short. They could be 5 minutes. So it's a tip on riding or whatever, and they're short, and then you're moving on. So, and those tips, those shorter segments then, get creative, think outside the box. Those shorter segments can then be a transition from one larger segment to another or one guest to another. They really do break it up.
Easy to pull those segments out too. If it's a really good segment, easy to pull it out, make it its own thing, or
use them for your best of shows. Which after you've been doing this a while and you get sick, you're going to need best of shows, right? So you don't miss episodes, and that's that we do that all the time.
Yeah, Daniel in the chat room. I'm going to toot my own horn. He says this week's School of Podcasting was, in Daniel's opinion, Dave's best produced episode. It's nicely tied in just best bits from multiple interviews. So yeah, I basically had one theme, which was how randomness doesn't typically work in podcasting, and I had a couple different examples of that, and then just tied them into.
Now tell everybody how time-consuming doing that is.
That is you kind of heard already. I've got an interview with Glenn about surveys, so I've got that there, but I want to talk to some other people, and then it's a matter of, and that's where Glenn, when you talk about taking a 90-minute interview down to 15. You're going to end up with a really good interview because it's harder to do short stuff than it is long. Because long, you just leave it in, everything stays. But, I always say, if we go back, I'm an old musician. Guns N' Roses had that Appetite for Destruction. The album after that, they did a double album, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. And it was okay. It was good. It had hits on it. If they'd taken that double album and just taken the best cuts, that would have been like the most amazing album, but they just kept everything. And I'm sure there was probably some they threw away, but anytime I do a presentation and I have I typically do like 40 minutes and then 15 minutes of Q&A, and they go, oh yeah, we need it to be 20. You got to figure out okay, I got to kill some of my darlings here. Some of these points, what really helps do that. So doing shorter stuff sometimes can be a little harder because you've got to really figure out what ties in. And we talked about it last week. I tested my story. Glenn, do you ever test things live with people? I tested a story. I said, hey, I'm going to talk about this on the School of Podcasting. And I told my dog story, and it did. My friends is like, I don't really think that fits. And I was like, okay, back to the drawing board.
No, we tested live on the audience. Apparently.
Yeah. So it's tough. But
yeah. So anyway, there we go. Thanks, guys, again for having
you're
me.
welcome.
And,
Glad you're doing well.
Again, it's been long enough. I need to go now, so you can get on with the show. Enough
We
me.
got to move on. We
Yeah,
got
that's right. Enough me.
segment we need to do.
Merry
Glenn,
Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to you. Glad you're doing well, and continued
Thank
health in
Thank you.
2021 for you.
Appreciate it.
Get some rest. Now go take your nap.
All right. Bye, guys.
yeah. And that would actually be, speaking of transitions.
Man, we went so long on that. I need some more coffee, Dave.
You need some more coffee.
Could you support me on that? And then we got some
Absolutely.
awesome supporters, right?
I can't see you, but it's like I'm hoping you're pouring now.
Okay.
Yeah, our awesome supporters. We're talking about, well, number one, James over at Dog Podcast Network. If you go to Dog Podcast Network, and I do this a lot. Did you hear me just say Dog Podcast Network? I often forget the .com. I don't know why, but I do that a lot. Dogpodcastnetwork.com. If you go to /101, so dogpodcastnetwork.com /101, he's giving away like cash. If you are a person that tells stories, oh, and by the way, there's a dog in the story. And I thought it was like a one-time contest. No, this is monthly. He is giving away cash. So I'm having fun watching him launch this thing. It's going to really jump off in January, but I kind of
love that dog. I love that dog. That's just that's a great picture.
But awesome. Our $20 supporters. She's in the chat room right now. Kim over at Toastmasters101.com. So if you want to develop your voice, if you want to reduce your editing time, we actually have somebody asked a question about editing we might talk about later. If you want to improve your content, it's all there. Toastmasters101.net. Greg over at debtshepherd.com. So if you're trying to get your finances in order for 2021, Greg can definitely help with that. Shane at spybrary.com. So if you want to get your James Bond on and all the other things spy, check him out over at spybrary.com. You just heard him, you know him, you love him. Glenn the Geek Hebert over at horseradionetwork.com. And as I was doing this, you know who the very first patron was? Glenn the Geek Hebert from horseradionetwork.com.
Nice. Yeah. I should have known this. Sorry, I wasn't listening.
Right.
I was thinking about the next segment.
I actually was the Indie Drop-In Network. I talk about this every week. IndieDropIn.com. What it is they promote independent creators by featuring an entire episode of your show. So what you can basically do is go over to them and say, hey, like they've got a true crime thing, they got a comedy thing, they got scary stories, and they're working on more. So if you basically want some exposure for your show, it's free. And they basically, when you go over to IndieDropIn.com, you love it because you're probably going to hear something you haven't heard before. So I was like, oh, I kind of get this a little more now. If you're looking for exposure, why not drop them over and say, because I guess there are some minor things you have to hit. Like, I don't know, it has to be a certain, like it has to sound good, probably things like that. But check that out, IndieDropIn.com. Max Trescott, if you're into flying and all things aviation, check him out at aviationnewstalk.com. Ed Sullivan, if you want, Mark can make you look good. Ed can make you sound good over at soniccupcake.com. Michael Delaney over at Baby Mountain Radio Productions, where podcasting and hard work are made fun. And if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, you can go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And also, if you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/store, there are even more ways to support the show. And we deeply appreciate that. So
20 gets you there, right? That 20 gets you mentioned every week. That's what on
20 gets you mentioned every week. And in the future, he said transitioning into something. I'm looking at Substack. Substack is a thing that just announced, along with Wistia and a couple other places, that they now have free media hosting, podcast hosting. And normally there's a part of me that goes, oh, that's not a good idea. Because of places like Podshow, Podango, Wild Voice, MyPodcast.com, Audiometric.io, Opinion Podcasting, and Zcat. You're like, Dave, what are those? Those are all free podcast media hosting companies that went out of business because free is not a good business model. Now, Substack is a company that primarily was made to sell newsletters. Like you could have a premium newsletter, which is kind of a cool thing. but they added podcasting to it. So originally I was kind of like, because I've seen Squarespace. I've seen things working at Libsyn that people will forward what the Squarespace people said about podcasting, because they used to use Squarespace's podcasting system. And there are times, actually, can I say this? There are times that Apple support says things about podcasting that I'm like, do they really understand how a podcast works? So I'm kind of worried sometimes when I see things like that. And so I actually logged in this morning, and the first thing I looked for is, do they have a redirect? And they do. So I thought that was cool. So I'm not saying go use Substack as your main podcast thing, but I'm probably going to use it for the School of Podcasting. I just asked, speaking of surveys, I asked the private Facebook group for the School of Podcasting, because we do these office hours. They're like 90 minutes. And I usually just upload the video to the private Facebook group, hence the whole private thing. And I kind of said, hey, would you guys like to listen to these? Because very seldomly is it something visual. It's usually just 4 or 5 heads asking questions and hanging out. And they said, yeah, that would be really, really cool. So I might, and this is one of the good things, bad things, Substack is free to use. And I can basically set up a publication, which in this case would be School of Podcasting members only. I can add people. I can comp them basically a subscription, so they don't have to pay for it, which is good because they're already paying me. And then they get their own RSS feed. So if they leave, I delete them as a subscriber, and they don't get the stuff anymore. So it's interesting.
Is it just Substack.com?
Substack.com, and there is no affiliate program, unfortunately. But if you want to sell, it's basically, and they take 10%. That's the other thing.
It started as a writing platform, right?
Yeah. And I logged in. I kicked the tires on this in March of 2019 because I can see where I was playing before. But is that what you're sharing on the screen?
It's exactly what I'm sharing. Yeah. So yeah. There you go. Substack.com.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I was like, oh, I might kick. The only thing I'm worried about it is I can really abuse their system. Like I can go in, not pay a dime, create a private podcast feed, not pay them 10%. Because I'm not charging for it. I'm giving everyone a free subscription that joins the School of Podcasting. And when I see that, I go, somebody didn't think that through, you know, and because I have a meeting on Tuesday with Supercast where they charge you 59 cents per premium subscriber. And I was like, well, I'll pay for, you know, I'll eat that cost to have a private feed. And then this came along. And like I said, I was like, well, before I go poo-pooing things, I should probably go do a little investigation. And so I did, and was like, this might work for me. You know, it's an alternative maybe to Patreon and Supercast. I just, I'm not sure, Supercast, they charge 59 cents. So it's really however much you charge is going to make if you charge $5, that's 10% kind of thing. But the other thing, speaking of tools and things like that, you know, I mentioned how free stuff goes out of business. I have to, I mean, pardon me, I don't know, but I just have to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I'm talking about here, of course, is Audello.com. If you go, wait, where have I heard about Audello before? That's the company that, and rightfully so, threatened to sue me because I said some slanderous things about them, because I said, I don't think this is a good company. I don't think this is a good idea. And here's the bad news, and I'm surprised Todd hasn't jumped all over this. I had somebody, I work for Libsyn, libsyn.com. It is not lip sync. It's not Lisbon. It's Libsyn. It's short for Liberated Syndication. And somebody was using Audello, which part of me went, wait, they're still around? And well, not really. And if you're using the Audello feed, now this person wasn't super strong on the mechanics of podcasting. So I said, hey, can you put in a redirect? She didn't quite get how it worked. And according to her, you can't log in anymore to Audello. And I said, now there is a link on their website because it says Audello is no longer open to the public, which to me is different than we're completely closed. That means we're not taking new customers. And I said, there's a link there at the bottom to a support page. I said, go there and say, hey, can you redirect to my Libsyn page? So it was just something, again, no matter what. That's why I said, when I looked at Substack, the first thing I said is, can I redirect this? because free media hosts go out of business all the time unless you're Anchor and get bought by Spotify. And so that's my first thing is like, if I use this, can I leave it? And I guess they have stats. I will find out later what those stats are, but I just know a lot of times like Squarespace makes beautiful websites, but their podcasting thing is horrible, and SoundCloud is great for musicians, but their podcasting stuff is about 5 years out of date right now. And so anytime I see stuff like that, I'm like, but my first impression when I logged in and saw I can do a redirect, and I looked at some of their help stuff, and it seems like they have people over there that actually did a little bit of work and understand what a podcast is and how it works and things of that nature. So that's exciting. And then Jim, you were talking about another thing that's going away from our good friends at Twitter.
Yeah. So, I just purchased the $10 plan from StreamYard. They made available kind of Black Friday. And I thought, okay, it's great to jump on StreamYard at $10. And I don't think that's available anymore. I think 20 is the only option at this point. But and that got me multicasting, right? Being able to stream. So I thought, well, I'll try out Periscope. It's a thing. And then this morning I got a note from Twitter. We're closing down Periscope.
Yeah.
So, when I started broadcasting over there just a couple weeks ago, everybody was like, are they still doing that? Because I let a few folks know, hey, we're live on Twitter, you can do it through Periscope. And they were like, that's still a thing,
What was the other thing? Wasn't there a cat? Remember there was Periscope and
Meerkat.
Yeah. And when they came out, it was like, this is a new big thing.
It was. Well, it is the big thing. It's just those platforms didn't last, right? And so it was, So I think, I have been, so I'm not going to, we're going to just end Periscope. We've been going to Twitch, which I think I'm going to try and grow an audience at Twitch. We fit that model pretty well. So I'll work on that. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but we'll get that figured out. And then I think I'm finally giving in, Dave, and I'm going to go to a Facebook group. So I'm going to give it a try, see how it goes. I have not been a big fan of streaming on Facebook, but I'll keep it in the group. I just don't want I don't want it in the public feed. I want it with my people. Like I don't want people, I don't want that. I don't want the kind of stuff. So you're not doing it this way. You're saying it wrong that way.
Yeah. Kyle says Twitch for the win. Doug says, remember Blab? That lasted about 6 months. The thing I remember, I interviewed somebody from Blab and I said, hey, this is video. You're doing this for free. It's exploding. What's your business model? And they kind of said, we're good. We sold, I forget where they came from, but they sold a company for $1 gazillion. We got money out the yin yang. And 6 months later they were gone. And that's where I kind of go, that's that whole like, money doesn't grow on trees thing. Patrick over from the Big Seance says, kids are all about Discord. I know. Discord's so crazy because it's nothing. It is literally old bulletin board style. It's ugly.
It's nasty. I mean, it's great. We use it for our for my tech group, and there's more interest on Discord now than there is on Facebook. That Facebook group just hasn't gotten. And I guess I could broadcast into Discord. They've got the ability to do that. So, and by the way, let me clarify. Periscope is going away. Twitter Live is still available. You got to jump through some hoops to get that one done.
Yeah.
So you can still broadcast on Twitter if you want to do it that way.
That's what Craig's asking. What is the best way to stream live on Twitter now?
Yeah,
so I guess Twitter
Live. The announcement. So if you go to, and Dave, I put that in, let's see, where did I put that? I put that in our Slack conversation. But listen to us. We've said just in 3 minutes, we have said about 19 different communications platforms.
Well, yeah. Oh, right? Then throw on top of that, I'm on a waiting list to get into Clubhouse. It's this app that you can, it's kind of like a Zoom meeting, only it's audio. That's it. So
yeah, there's just so many. I mean, there's just so many different ones to do with that. But yeah, so we'll start. I'm going to try. Well, I guess when I come back in January, we're going to try. I'm going to try streaming into the Facebook group. Although, okay, now that I'm saying that out loud, I like it even less. So I may try to figure out how to stream into Discord. I think that's not an option in StreamYard, but I don't think.
Well, John says he's starting a show on Twitch on Monday.
Yeah, good luck.
DJs are using Discord on Twitch to keep their people together in case Twitch shuts down DJs playing music.
Yeah.
Well, that's that whole legal thing that you run into. That's,
Yeah, no, one place, you try to build on one platform, but then, we know what's going on YouTube right now. And Facebook is getting very restrictive in a lot of the things they're doing.
I'm trying to, if you go to podcastingresources.com, Kim Craggy in the chat room is asking, hey, I'm looking for guests. And this is one of those things that, number one, you're going to find the same people over and over and over. But if you go over to podcastingresources.com, I'm looking for the link. I forget guest booking is what I have it under. And there are a ton of these things now. I mean, it's almost like a CVS where every 10 feet you run into guest.io, interview valet, podcast singular, guest plural, podcastguest.com, podbooker, podmatch, podit, kitcaster, awesome guest, expert bookers. I mean, they just keep, and they're all, and again, I kind of look at them and go, like, what's the business model? Like, I kind of don't get it. Like, cause it's cool that you're making it easy to connect, but, and I have been, the one I use, the one that I get the most stuff from is still the original one, which is podcastguests.com. So, there are, you know, that's where I go. Now, the problem is, I shouldn't say problem. They have an abundance of coaches that inspire and empower kind of stuff. I see a lot of that. But if you're looking for, what kind of guest are you looking for, Kim? That would be one thing to know. So there you go. And Ralph M. Rivera is trolling us. So there you go.
With guests, I have found great success in, you know, I bet I have 10 now reoccurring guests that come on twice a year. And it gives me it makes it easy to do booking. You know, I look at the list of when they were on last, and if it's been 4 months, I ping them and say, hey, can you come on in 2 months? And I give them plenty of time. So, you know, hey, it's like right now I'd be booking for February and just say, hey, can you come on in February? And rolling through those consistent guests has paid way more dividends than I thought it would, because you get consistency. They know the show, and then the audience starts to like them. You know, they get used to them. And so I think I've had Aaron Lawrence on maybe 7, 8 times. And it works out great.
Well, and it builds that relationship with those people then.
It does. And many of them, you know, they have their own sites or they have their own podcasts. And so we get an opportunity to promote them in that. I mean, they do things differently. We had the guys from thinkcomputers.org on, and their reviews are dynamite. Like, they're thorough and they're awesome. And I hate doing reviews. So when my listeners want a review on something, they're a big gaming site too. So it's on a lot of gaming stuff. I'm going to send them there because we got that kind of relationship with them. So it's kind of that informal network, I guess, but they're great guests. You know, we had them on last night and they were just fantastic.
Well, and speaking of networks, John has a great point. What about LinkedIn to find guests? If you're a business podcast, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Kim says, I have friends who want to get on podcasts. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/interview or interviews, we will find out. It is not interviews. The key to this, I had somebody this week that asked me, since we're on Ask the Podcast Coach, crap, I don't know what it is. If you go to interview, that's going to be my booking sheet. But I had somebody who wanted me to want to know if we took guests on Ask the Podcast Coach. I said, every week, 10:30 to 11:30, askthepodcastcoach.com/join, because this was a business person. And I when somebody sends me a pitch that's just bad, that like shows that you did zero, as in like zero, no homework. And I type in bad pitch, and it says, here are 2 videos that you can learn about my audience to make you a better guest. And of course, those 2 videos are, hey, that's a really bad pitch. And she emailed me back and said, I have 10 to 15 different clients. There's no way. It's impossible to do the homework. And there was a part of me that was like, you know, isn't that your job though? Isn't that what they're paying you to find shows that match? And
no, they're paying them to spray and pray.
That's what exactly.
Yeah, it's just spray and pray. There's enough podcasts out there right now that this is actually something you could get away with, and we don't tolerate it. But you know, I started using Text Expander, and one is called what did I name that thing? This is the hard part about Text Expander, is you have to remember what you named. Yeah. Guest post is what it's named in it for me. So if I type in guest post, then it's got that standard reply for folks. But yeah, it's spray and pray, and I get it. I'm starting to get some of that on the Gallup side. And I'm like, have you even listened to one of them? Because we're not a guest show that way. But it's the numbers are big enough, Dave. They're going to get something. They're going to land something that way. So that's what because there's folks who just will take any guest.
That's it.
Need a guest, So I love Glenn's, by the way, I love Glenn's advice on guests about I don't necessarily agree that that's going away. I think it's, or people are listening to less of it, but it's a good reminder. You got to keep things moving with your guests,
That's it. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/677, I got to make a short link for that. That is the episode I have on how to be a guest, but also how to find guests. I actually kind of was not making friends this week on Facebook because somebody said, I had this guest, they were horrible and they rambled all over the place and blah, 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 and bad guest, bad guest, bad guest. And I kind of went, part of that's on you. You know what I mean? It's like, what kind of research did you do on this person? Or are you a person that does that thing where it's like, I'll take anybody with a pulse? And that did not go over well. They were kind of like, okay, yeah. But seriously, what do I do now? And I'm like, well, you either man up and say, your content didn't really connect with my audience, and we're not going to use the interview. If you'd like, we could try again. Or B, Zencaster ate it. Whatever you want to do. So it's always interesting. But yeah, that is the thing right now. And that's why we're getting tons of these requests, is all the gurus are saying, don't start a podcast, just be a podcast guest. And that's why you also have some people going, does that mean we can charge? And I'm like, you can, I guess, if you really want. So
when I get guest requests, I always say, okay, where can I go listen to you at?
That's it.
And try to listen, try to at least listen to some of it before going in. I didn't always do that. And it didn't pay off. Okay. We have an update. Can I do a quick update on my screen? Is the order confirmation for the Motu. You want to show that really quick? So,
there we go.
Bangs reminded me, and I didn't get the notification that the M2s were available. So rather than just stretching this out forever, I just pulled the trigger. So the M2 will be coming. I hope I'm not showing anything I shouldn't be showing. I think everything's good there, but I think there's my
Jim,
order.
Thanks
number.
for showing your credit card number. That's awesome.
There's my order.
Everybody
number.
write that down.
I don't think you could you do anything with the order number? I don't know. Anyway,
no.
You would need my account information. So so it's on its way. It'll be here Wednesday, I think, the 23rd. It'll be a pre-Christmas present to myself. Not that I haven't bought any of those yet.
Right.
And we'll have we'll test it out next week on Ask the Podcast Coach.
Yeah, I was going to plug in the P4 today.
Oh.
But I had other things I wanted to do today, and I needed more little jingle buttons.
By the way, I used schoolofpodcasting.com/Sweetwater.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Gary said, I approached the guy about introducing one of our experts to be a guest. He wanted to record a discovery call. Here's the problem, because he basically then said, I decided he wouldn't be a good fit. Some people are doing discovery calls as part of the episode. So they'll be like, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And the person goes into, I was born in blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And then they're like, oh, so you did this? And they're like, oh, yeah. And then they say, oh, well, what was it like? And finally they find something that's going to fit their audience. Cut that first 15 minutes out. Discovery calls are not a bad thing. You're just trying to figure out, are you going to fit? The bad news is people are leaving that part of the interview in. Get to the part that's really, really good. And the other thing I think people are getting their signals crossed, because you're hearing like stories are great. I was in Google this week and was looking at the, podcastmanager.google.com, where you can see that's where you submit your show. And I saw where last week Daniel was saying, hey, that was a really good episode. That had like 98% people listened to 98% of that episode. And I was like, that was kind of a story. And then I looked at another one that was kind of a story. And I can see where when you're telling a story, it seems to aid people listening to it. But that doesn't mean that all stories are good. So I had somebody contact me this week, And have you ever had, Jim, you have kids. Have you ever had kids come up to Dad, we need a tiebreaker. So-and-so said this, and I say this. No, which one's right? Have you ever had that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I had two co-hosts, and they're like, we're doing a thing at the beginning where the one co-host that knows the guest will say, like, remember when we met back in Poughkeepsie and yada, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And then the other co-host, A, kind of feels left out. And I said, well, here's something. A, you're worried about the guest and you're worried about the co-host. I go, who's the podcast for? And she's like, the listener. And I go, exactly. And I go, and does the listener care that you met them in Poughkeepsie? I go, just cut that out. And they said, oh, we don't edit. And my head exploded. And I just was like, okay. So, so stories are great if it reinforces the point you're trying to make. So keep that in mind. One other thing, I wanted to bring this one up just because it was so not the typical kind of question. How we doing on time? Oh man, we're getting close.
About 3 minutes.
Because I do think at times people overthink stuff. And so James in Facebook, I think this is in the podcast movement group. Quick question. What's the etiquette for inserting advertising, host read, for example, on an episode where you've interviewed a guest? Should we be getting the permission, in this case from the guest, to do it beforehand? Are they entitled to any of the return, or is it entirely up to the show creator to put one in or not, regardless of the guest appearance? And that was just one that I was like, I have never thought of any of these, and no, and no. So unless whoever is the guest, they should know like what they're getting into. Like I always listen to at least one episode if I'm going to be interviewed on somebody's show. And, so, and I mean, the guest kind of is coming on to promote whatever the heck they're promoting. That's how they win. And if you have advertising on your show, Jim, have you ever heard anything like that?
No.
Yeah, that was me. No. I was like, that's a new one. And you might just be overthinking things just a tad there. 'Cause
anything worth thinking about can be overthought about.
Yeah. Right? And if it was something, because I was trying to think of like an outlandish ad. So I remember back in the day, some of the adult oriented, the explicit shows would have ads from Adam and Eve, which is some sort of sex toy thing.
Adult superstore.
Yeah. Adult superstore. There we go. And, I think you would know that going on that show. And I don't think Minister Bob is going on let's just, never mind. If you could have heard the title that came in my head.
Yeah. Now that you say it that way. Okay. So now that you say it that way, like before I was like, how would this even be a problem? But when you spread it that far apart, when you have Minister Bob and the Adult Superstore, you kind of go, you probably should at least think about it. Like, okay, do I have a promotion? Well, we've talked about this here. We have Mark and doing that. And then we've also promoted Pod Page, which is a not necessarily competitors, but there's room for branding and there's room for anyways. So it's a thought, right? I think especially as a podcaster, when you're taking on advertisers, do you have to think that through? Do you have conflicting advertisers on there, or can you have two advertisers that are doing the same thing? That's the other extreme, right? That
gets a little tricky because then you're like, they want
to be exclusive, which is, by the way, is another level you could have to say, okay, we have an advertising level here. If you want to be exclusive, it's this, and I will guarantee you there will be no competitors.
Yeah. Right. Kyle says your show, your ad revenue would be like a guest to your house, get a portion of your mortgage. No.
Yeah, but how awkward in the Preacher Bob? What'd you call him? What was his name?
Minister Bob.
Minister Bob. Yeah. Minister Bob, and then a Adult Superstore ad runs. Like, that's just awkward, right?
Yeah. Well, I also don't think Minister Bob's going to go on the,
True. No, true. Yeah. But it didn't make any sense until you spread them.
that far apart. Yeah, exactly. So, well, awesome. As I look over, it's about that time. So, Jim, what is coming up on Home Gadget Geeks over there at theaverageguy.tv?
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit earlier, Bob and Ryan from thinkcomputers.org. Come on. We talk about kind of the state of CPU and GPU purchasing. Dave, if you're a computer builder, if you're trying to build your own computer right now, there are no CPUs or GPUs to be found. Like, you're just, the market it's a long story. We talk about it on the show, and so you can get caught up. I'll be posting that a little bit later this weekend at theaverageguy.tv.
What is a GPU?
That's the graphics card. So
okay, because I knew CPU, and I'm like, GPU?
Yeah, GPU. So yeah, you can't find those things anywhere. They're sold out. Just like Xbox, PlayStation 5s, sold out. Like you can't find them anywhere.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, on the School of Podcasting, first of all, you should also know that in the month of, well, probably from now going forward, I have to figure this out. I'm working on adding an arm of the School of Podcasting. It's going to be audio editing, and I need to have them edit something before I put my stamp on this. So that means I'm probably going to hand this off to some people, which probably means this won't be out till Tuesday, where I usually spend all my Saturday doing these. I'm like, I need something to edit. So, but on the School of Podcasting, you heard Glenn today. So we're going to hear some of that, as well as some other clips I have of people that have really, you create this relationship with people that you just didn't know. And so we're going to talk about the power of podcasting on the School of Podcasting. So thanks to everyone in the chat room. We got 32 people watching right now. So thanks for sticking around. We got more stuff coming up for post show, including, again, how long does it take to build an audience? Well, I've got a clip that's going to answer that for you. If you'd like to be an awesome supporter, go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and stick around for some post show.